But yeah, so you were saying, so you were a young man with your spiked hair and your, face piercings and stuff, playing Limp Bizkit. and then
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
how did things progress from there?
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, it pretty much was always just I was a guitar player
Mm.
or a bass player in bands for a long time. So I would just play kind of on my own and kind of progressively get better. When I think it was about 2006, I think it was 2006. That's when I first started I started a hardcore punk band with a friend of mine. We called it Monstro. I know there's another band called Monster that came after us, but it was kind of like a weirdo if you mixed I mean, I'm not a fan of this band, but like Terror, if you mix that with
How
like
dare you say
Botch.
anything bad about Terror on this
No, it's just not. I'm
podcast?
sorry. It's just not.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 153 of Into the Necrosphere. On this installment of the podcast, I'm catching up with none other than Keith Rich, drummer for Druids, a band out of Iowa which caught my attention with their fantastic new record, Shadowwork. I reviewed it a couple of episodes ago. You guys absolutely loved the record as well, and hence why I decided I needed to get somebody from the band to come on the show and represent. So that is exactly what's going to be coming your way in about 2 minutes' time. Straight after my conversation with Keith, I will also be doing a roundup of my favorite releases of October thus far. It has been a absolutely vintage month as part of a vintage year for heavy music. So we'll be talking about some of the best stuff to come out over the course of the last couple of weeks. And then, of course, I will be delving in, as usual, to my infamously or increasingly infamous and increasingly notorious News Rants and React segment, where I listen to some new music, I give you my first impressions of what I'm hearing, and we talk some trash as we mull the issues of the day and set the world to rights. If you're new to the podcast, please make sure that you smash the subscribe button on your platform of choice. Follow me on social media. Leave me a 5-star review if the spirit moves you to do so. And if you really want to show your love and support for Into the Necrosphere, then head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store and pick yourself out a t-shirt or a hoodie, given that if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere as I do, the winter months are fast approaching. Winter is, of course, hoodie weather and also black metal weather. And if you checked out last week's episode where I met up with the boys from Necromaniacs and we did our countdown of our favorite 6 black metal releases of the 1990s, thank you very, very much if you sent me a message. Thanks to everybody for the great response that received. Of course, the Necromaniacs form part of my fellow horsemen of the podcast Apocalypse. On a Monday, Brandon Legion brings you Horrible 666. On a Wednesday, Mike Hill drops the knowledge with Everything Went Black. On a Thursday, there's Necromaniacs doing my favorite weekly podcast. And then on a Sunday, my friend Carl Haikara brings you the Devil's Sermon on the Lord's Day with Soul Knox. Next week, I've got Rob Watkins of the band Black Lava on the podcast. Great guy, great conversation, and in my view, one of the best signings that Season of Mist have made recently. So very excited to talk about that record in more detail and for you guys to hear the conversation that Rob and I had. For now, however, let us welcome to the podcast for the first time, Keith Rich of Druids. And I said, I hope you're feeling chatty because I plan on getting you entrapped in as many scandalous comments as I possibly can, so that I can so I can I can get rich and become popular off the back of the stories I sell to the newspaper after you guys break big. Because I have to say, I posted the review for the record, and obviously, I was very positive about it. The more I've gone back and listened to that, the more I get the same feeling that I got when I saw Mastodon at the Underworld in London way back when. I think right after Remission came out, and you kind of get the sense that you're sitting on top of something really big. How have you felt about the response to the record so far?
I mean, it's kind of hard to gauge just because of like COVID has changed the landscape of everything, as you've probably heard like a million times. So we really haven't been able to go out and tour on it at all, which is weird for us. It's the first time in 6 years where we haven't gone out and toured in support of a release. So it's hard to say in the States. With our label being based in Germany, it's actually, I feel like we're seeing the majority of the press kind of come from that side of things, like in Europe mostly, and it's all been pretty mind-blowing to us that it's overwhelmingly positive. We made this record in a really weird circumstance, and it was kind of disjointed in the way that, sort of typical of us, but also like a little bit different, where there were demos being done apart from each other. As far as me, and the other guys, they were working on songs for 4 or 5 months, and I didn't see them once the pandemic broke for about that length of time. So I would kind of go in on my own and make some drum parts up, and Luke had some ideas because he plays drums as well, so we kind of combined our efforts. But yeah, but the reception's been great. Like, it's just kind of cool to see that this kind of experimental way of making a record turned out better than I think we anticipated. I know we're all incredibly proud of it. So
yeah, it sounds, the thing about it is, it sounds, so there's two aspects that strike me straight away. Having now really gotten into this record, I went back and I listened to your earlier stuff, and it's very good. But this, to me, is a seismic leap forward in terms of songwriting craft, how the record sounds. It has this huge bombastic production, and all three of you just sound like you're completely at the top of your game. But it really does. I mean, it almost made me want to go. It didn't make me want to go back. I did go back onto Metal Archive, and I was like, are those meant to be demos? And this is the debut, like, because it kind of makes the earlier stuff, almost feel like they were just they were the tease before the main event.
Sure.
But yeah, let me pause there before we go any further. I guess what are your thoughts on that? And in terms of this record coming out the way that it did, you kind of touched on a couple of things there around how it was written and how it was constructed, and it sounds to me like it was very different to what you had been used to doing before. Talk me through some of that and how the album came into being.
Yeah. Well, in regards to the other material, real quick, I'll just say, that when we first got together, we basically were just, it kind of like most like punk bands or metal bands do, when you're first like local, you just kind of, we've got like X amount of songs, let's just go and record them because that's all we've got. And that was very much kind of the way we were doing things up until fairly recently, within the last like 5 or 6 years. With Cycles of Mobium, that's when we started to kind of do a little bit of a shift in terms of how we were writing, and maybe thinking a little bit more conceptually about releases and things like that. It was weird. We did Spirit Compass and Monument back to back, but a lot of those songs, we were actually thinking how much more of a killer release it would have been if both of those were just all on one one record, because we think that they're very complementary to each other. So I feel like in terms of our playing abilities and things like that, that was kind of the turning point for where we were really starting to kind of up the ante, I think, as musicians as well as just songwriters. Once Spirit Compass kind of hit, that's when things started to kind of really kick into high gear. In terms of Shadow Work, the way that it was kind of conceived, I think, current world, COVID aside, political things here in America have been hot trash for a while, and especially with the previous, president, that was not so great. So, I mean, there's just kind of this heaviness, maybe, I think. I mean, I still feel it, and I've been feeling it for years now at this point. So, I mean, I feel like that has kind of, at least for me, taken on maybe some of what I put into that album on my perspective of things. Just kind of felt heavy all around. It's a darker record than we've ever done, but I also think it's more exploratory. It's kind of us finding ways to kind of cut through the dark, maybe, or find some light spots in there. I think I think we all find it kind of a little bit more of an introspective, but also a more optimistic record than the other ones. Lyrically, for sure, the last three releases have been highly conceptual and all kind of stringed together. And this is kind of the first time. I mean, Luke will tell you, our singer, one of our singers and guitar player, this is the first time he's actually gone deeper and kind of made it a little bit more personal lyrically. I mean, songs like Hide, for example, are very, clear indications of that. But I think, we were writing this record in the pandemic, so it was just kind of a lot of trading on the, Dropbox or whatever, just trading demos or sending stuff through our phones. And it was interesting because I don't know what pushed me to do it. We started writing some songs pre-pandemic, but we really got into the meat of it during. And so I just remember distinctly like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do the best I can. Like Dance of Skulls is a song I'm incredibly proud of. That's like the most creative drum wise for me that I think I've ever gotten, to be able to do on a recording before. And it was so exciting. And I feel like we were all open to kind of just keeping it loose a little bit. Like there was definitely a vibe to the record. There's definitely a sound to the album, but I feel like, we were all kind of just willing to hear each other out even more than we normally do and just try everything. And I think that it kind of speaks volumes to the end product. The end product is pretty, in my opinion, pretty gnarly. I really am proud of it. And I think it's one of the coolest recordings I've ever done. I think it's pretty great.
Well, Dance of Skulls is a great example, I think, of that ambition that you hear on this record that I hadn't been there previously. And it's interesting to hear your commentary around it. I guess is it a case of you maturing as songwriters, or is it a case of you guys kind of taking the brakes off creatively? Because I sometimes, imagining myself in a younger band's shoes, and speaking to a lot of bands, I think a lot of bands initially kind of have a specific view of what they want to do. They gain a following, and people that like, that let's say, that box of, what they offer. And they're a bit nervous to kind of step outside of that. And in some cases, as you have here, once you do that, there's just this groundswell of just kind of incredible music that comes out of it. But it takes you having to break free from those shackles to be able to, I guess, have the confidence to get out and actually put out something that's, maybe more authentic to who you are right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. Certainly, we've been a band for almost 15 years now, which is kind of crazy. We started as a two-piece and we're a very different band than we were 15 years ago. But, I think along with maturity, it kind of goes to the core of what we've been about from the start. I mean, I think every song, it's kind of interesting. I feel like every song we have ever done, you can listen to it if you're familiar with the band and you're like, oh, that's a Druid song. Like, I don't think, and we have a distinct sound, definitely, but I don't know where that necessarily comes from in terms of, we're not trying to sound like us, if that makes sense. We're simply just making stuff that we would want to play and would want to hear. I do that my solo stuff too. It's just like, I don't really care if anybody likes it, but if we're satisfied and we think it's good for us three, that's good enough. So we've never been too concerned with, I guess, trying to shoot for a certain style or stay within the confines of things, and we're kind of coming up against that. We're starting to talk about writing some new material soon, and just kind of like coming back to ground zero in a way of just kind of being like, let's just see what happens. I think when you start thinking about it too hard and then you really put yourself in that box, like you're saying, I mean, you're stuck a little bit, you're treading ground that's already been done, and it's not as exciting. I don't know. I've been in bands that have done that in the past, and it just kind of, it's just another variation of the same thing. And it's not super cool or fun to listen to or play. It gets incredibly boring. So I think we all like the challenge. We all like to kind of up our songwriting skills, but also just as players, we like to better ourselves. I mean, I'm a completely self-taught drummer, and I can't like I legitimately can't believe the things I'm doing right now on drums, like because I couldn't have done that physically 15 years ago. So it's kind of crazy. The older I'm getting, somehow I'm treating it as like it's like almost like a young man's game. It's like I'm almost 40, and I'm like, I'm doing stuff that I should have been doing in my early 20s. So it's kind of crazy. I'm
Now that
making it
you've
harder for
started that
myself.
course of steroids, you find the drumming is
Yeah, yeah,
is getting a lot easier
yes,
than it
yep,
was. But so that, I mean,
naturally.
again, Dance of Skulls is an interesting one because you mentioned, you don't quite know where you get your sound from. And when I hear that song, I can hear elements of Big Business,
Mm,
Melvins,
yep.
Neurosis, Caius,
Mm,
but then there's also kind of a heavier, almost hardcore edge to it on some points.
sure.
And then there's kind of more traditional, metal sensibility, especially like old school thrash, Bay Area thrash that comes into it. But
Mhm.
in this melting pot, you somehow manage to kind of bring it all together in something cohesive, because a lot of times bands, I think that draw from such a wide palette, they can sound like they're kind of it's like a bit of a pick and mix. They just sort of pick, okay, well, we'll take this idea, and it sounds like a patchwork quilt. Whereas you guys, have something that is very kind of coherent and very much your own. But as I said, you can easily recognize, if you know
Yeah.
those elements that I mentioned before. Big Business in particular, because I think they're a grossly underrated band. And as
Yeah.
soon as I like picked it up on this record, I think it almost made me like it even more. So,
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good find for sure. I mean, we like, Big Business and Melvins are a huge influence for us, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. We've all played in bands of various styles. Like I started in punk bands, and I've been in hardcore bands, and so have the other guys. So it's kind of interesting that stuff finds its way in somehow. Yeah, we all listen to so many different types of music that it's not just metal, because I think if you limit it, kind of like when you're writing a song, if you're limiting it to one thing, then it'll sound incredibly derivative, and like, you're going to sound like you're ripping off like a Slayer song or something. And it's
mm,
like, well, I like Slayer, but I mean, I'm going to listen to, I don't know, Radiohead, or whatever else, that or like Bjork or something. I'm all about listening to, or My Bloody Valentine. It's like we like so many things, that it just, I think that's what kind of, maybe that's what kind of gives it its unique flavors, that we all just kind of bring something different to the table. Like our bass player was in a folk band for years,
mm.
so it's just kind of interesting, but we've all played heavy music growing up and stuff. So it's just, yeah, it's just kind of a culmination of so many variables, I think, that kind of
Well,
yeah,
I was
make it
going
what
to
it
ask
is.
you, what kind of environment spawns a band that is that rich in influence and sounds that distinct, because you guys sound like a very American band. You look
Mm.
at where you're like my first thought, I think, before I'd even read where you guys were based from, is like, oh, these guys are probably from California, or I didn't think Iowa for whatever
Yeah.
reason. There's no disrespect to Iowa, but
No, go ahead.
yeah,
That's fine.
Iowa is known for Slipknot, and
Yeah.
so therefore immediately it goes down in my estimation as of spots to look out for when it comes to good music. I was going to
Yeah.
ask you, actually, out of interest, because they're kind of like the hometown band, and you don't
Mm.
have to run them down if you don't want, if you feel you're
Well,
you're going to. But how big does the shadow of Slipknot loom over the kind of local Iowa scene?
uh, you know, not as much as you think. I mean, it's very much like the shadow is there, definitely.
Mm,
It's always it's always somewhere in the periphery, but it's never like, it's not a very constant, at least not in my circles. It's not like a constant form of conversation. We, the influences. I mean, I think that there's a sense of like pride, if anything, if anything. But I don't think anyone's like, we're out to be the next Slipknot, or who's going to be
no.
the next breakout band. Nothing like that. So, I think their first two records are pretty heavy and great. But after that, it's not really my thing. But I mean, I have respect. I mean, to come from Iowa, I don't even know what like a good comparison would be to, put it into perspective. But I mean, to kind of hint at what you were saying earlier, it's like what gave us, like, what was, the environment like. I mean, you've got three very, I mean, two of three of us are brothers. So it's like, and I've known the guys for about 20 years. So it's like, we all grew up in a really boring small town kind of thing. And there was literally nothing else to do except for like play guitar or drums or whatever and watch movies and listen to music. So it's like, you get bored, you find your people. I found my crew very early on. A lot of people I'm still friends with today, like 14, 15, like local punk shows. And then you just kind of get really immersed in it from there. Cause it just kind of, it almost seems like an escape or a way out, to see the world or see places. And I've been very fortunate to get to tour the world in various bands and stuff. And I mean, I'm kind of living the dream. I wish I was doing more of it right now, but it's just not the case. But yeah, so it's just kind of like we're born out of being bored. The band kind of came about, just Luke and I wanted to play something heavy and more to our tastes that we hadn't been able to do before. And here we are. So it's kind of wild.
So how many people in the town that you grew up in?
In the town that I grew up in, about 1,200.
Jesus. Okay. So that is,
yeah.
because I was trying to put it into perspective based on where I grew up in, which was,
oh, sure.
It's the belly button of South Africa.
Okay.
It is where the religious fervor is at its most aggressive. And so sure. my sort were frowned upon over there. I was referred to as a Satanist when I was a little kid because I liked the music of Aha. Then I was evil because
wow.
when I was, because I liked the music of Depeche Mode. Then I was evil because I liked the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Then AC/DC, and by that, and then beyond AC/DC, it kind of, it sort of just blends into the background because, after a while, it's like, well, now it's Slayer and Deicide and stuff. So, well, you may as well just call me a Satanist. But they were pretty aggressive about those things. And everything that people have described to me about places like Iowa, I've always gotten the impression, having not been there myself, that it's kind of a similar sort of vibe.
Yeah, definitely. The way you're describing it sounds just incredibly familiar. The town I grew up in, I was pretty much the only one of me. So it was a town of mostly elderly people. So I mean, I really was kind of on my own. We shared a school district with a neighboring town, and I had a few friends there that were kind of into similar things. But for the most part, you're talking about maybe 3,000 to 5,000 people, and there are only like less than 10 of you. It's pretty intense. So yeah, I got in trouble all the time at school and was a terrible student because of it. And just because I like different things and I wasn't interested in football or sports or anything like that. So like skateboarding and punk. So yeah.
Yeah, which was kind of similar to me. I was a good student, which that was probably more out of fear of my dad than anything else. But I now I'm thankful that I was, because it's helped me. But all of the other stuff is the same. I love rugby, which is I don't know how familiar you are with the sport, but it's obviously the sport of kings, the greatest sport of them all. But I used to despise it when I was young. I thought it was the fucking worst thing on the face of the earth. The only thing that mattered to me was skateboarding, metal, and that was pretty much it. That was like my whole identity was wrapped up in that. I have found as I've grown older, especially metal is still very much core to my identity, but I've become a lot more relaxed about a lot of other things. As I said, I've embraced the sporting culture. There's many other parts of the culture I still find to be weak and pathetic, but there are things I'm chilled out about. How have you? Like, how have you experienced it as you've grown older? Because you still live in Iowa, right?
I do. I moved back here maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. I was living in a place called Kansas City, it's about 3 hours from here, and it's a much bigger city. But yeah, I've always grown up, listening to things like Michael Jackson and, even like Wham and stuff. And so I have a soft spot for that stuff. I've never been one to be, there was a period, you're a teenager, early 20s, you're kind of a dick about music. and
Yeah.
kind of a little asshole. So I was definitely that. I mean, to a T. I was very snobby about stuff. And as I've gotten older, around my mid to late 20s, I just started to kind of soften and just be like, you know what, if I don't know, if this Spice Girl song is on and I'm not gonna change it. It's fine. It reminds me of like my sister growing up. It's like us growing up as kids or something. It's like it doesn't matter. I I I don't know. I listen to more just kind of diverse things anymore. Really, I still listen to heavy stuff. That new Chat Pile record's pretty wild. So I've been listening to that a lot. My son likes it for some reason. That kind of blows my mind. But I grew up more like in terms of influences and things and bands I still like today, like more rock stuff, like the Smashing Pumpkins, and like Isis. I really liked Isis for a long time. That drummer is a huge influence and stuff. So it's just like, it's just such a wide variety of things that I don't get too worked up about anything anymore. I'm just trying to survive over here. And if I have to listen to something that I might not have liked 10 years ago, it's like not the end of the world anymore. But yeah, I listen to everything now. So it's just, I really like a lot of world music and reggae and dub, and we all kind of like jam that stuff in the van, to kind of mellow out, just to break it up a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of how I've softened.
what about the rest of kind of the small town lifestyle? Like, have you warmed to it? Have you embraced it now? I would assume you have to a degree, given the fact that you're back in Iowa.
Good question. No, I don't. I mean, I like the quiet, slower speed of things, I guess, to a degree, but I very much am a person that can't sit still for very long. I like to travel. I like to move around. I'm very politically inclined. So this town is very
red.
Very red. The state's very red, but it's also very just kind of whatever about stuff. So I mean, they'll care about an issue for a week when it's hot, and then they kind of drop it. Whereas in Kansas City, where I was living, it was very much more I guess aggressive on that front, and more educational, and I really like that aspect of things. So I still very much am kind of the teenager who wants to question everything and kind of mess some things up and be a little bastard about stuff, I guess. But like, I want to do it in a smart way, I guess. I have a son now, and that's been pretty awesome. So that's kind of slowed me down a little bit. But I mean, in terms of kind of everything else, I mean, I really haven't warmed to it too much. I find it still, I find it's like a bigger version of the boring small town I grew up in. So it's not like, it hasn't really changed too much for me, unfortunately.
It hasn't taken. I mean, I went from the spot that I grew up in, that I explained to you now, to the fucking backyard of Sodom and Gomorrah, London. I lived in London for 18 years, and then I moved, out to the countryside here in the UK. And so now I'm completely, in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I'm like the village. We don't live in a village. We live outside a village. The village that is near to us, I think, has 500 people. So, so I mean, it is as isolated as can be. I also find myself, as I've grown older, where we used to go on holiday when I was young, I used to think it was the most boring, awful place on the face of the earth. Now it's like fucking paradise to me. I can't wait to get there. It's like,
having been over there, I don't blame you. I mean, it's gorgeous over there. Yeah, you got nothing.
You've been to South Africa?
Oh no, sorry. To London and England and things like that. Yeah, sorry.
No,
you're back in South Africa?
Yeah, so I grew up in South Africa. When I go back on holiday, I go back to a spot in South Africa called Hermanus, which if you want to experience true paradise, that's the place to go. Nice. I would strongly suggest you don't go to South Africa if you're a vegan, but if you like meat and you like wine and you like being out in nature, best place on earth. Cannot recommend it highly enough. But so I was curious though. You know, having said all these things, what actually attracted you back to Iowa?
Kind of necessity. We had kind of hit a point where we weren't sure what the next move was, my wife and I. Um, so we moved back with her mom, and just so we could figure it out. And we were only supposed to be there for less than a year. Pandemic happened, and then we got pregnant, and so we thought, well, we're gonna just maybe stick around for a little bit. So as of right now, we're here. You know, in a few years, I have no idea what the plan was. So, you know, we made the band work at a distance for, yeah, like 5 years, 5.5 years. So we wrote all our records during that time. So it's not like it's a big deal. All our bigger records anyway, that to us, you know. So it's not really a big deal as far as the distance goes, because it's not super far. If we were to go back to like a place like Kansas City, but yeah, we're just here, just trying to figure it out. We're still in the figuring it out stage. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're kind of in limbo at the moment, to be honest. Yeah.
On the precipice of when the band breaks big and it's no more Iowa, off to off to Vegas. Well, like where would you like to live ideally if you could choose any spot in the US to live?
Nowhere.
You'd move? You'd leave the country?
I would love to.
Where would you go?
I mean, I you know, a number of places. France has always been a place I really enjoy. I've been there, you know, 4 or 5 times. I've been on a couple of tours out there, and then my wife and I did backpacking all across there, and actually some of Africa. We went to Morocco. So I mean, I've dabbled in all these places. I just think it's a really beautiful country. I mean, I get that I don't understand the ins and outs of all the countries and all the. I know they have garbage there too. I mean, it's the same anywhere, but that's always been like a really kind of sweet spot for me. I really enjoy a lot of places in the UK that I've been. Either that or maybe even someplace like Germany. But you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen anytime, but and Sweden honestly looks like a pretty nice place, but I've never been. So, but yeah, I mean, in the US, I mean, I guess I'm happy, you know, as long as I've got my family with me and I, you know, can still do the band. I don't really, I can make whatever work. So I don't really have an ideal place here in the States, unfortunately. I mean, Kansas City is the only place that has felt like home in my, you know, adult life. So I do enjoy that, but I don't know that would be where I would ultimately end up long term. I really have no idea. So yeah, out of the country. That's my answer.
I would say I've been to the States. I've only been once, and it was just for a week for work. But I mean, everything I saw about it, I loved.
Where did you go?
So I went to San Jose, and then I spent a day in San Francisco. San Francisco, nice. I thought it was all right. There were some, you know, Walking Dead looking guys walking around in the streets near the restaurant that I had lunch at. But San Jose, I thought was fucking brilliant. I mean, I looked at that. I was like, I'd move here today if I could.
It's a cool town. Yeah.
Yeah. It was definitely like all the restaurants we ate at were absolutely brilliant, which as you could probably picking up food is a very important element of wherever I move to. So the other wish list country to move to is Mexico. So if they could get the cartels under control, then you can welcome me into Tijuana anytime. It's interesting actually, because I do a job where I manage global teams. So I'm kind of in this fortunate spot where I get this helicopter view of what everybody is like in every single country. And as an aside, I think I've said it on the podcast before. I think the best people that I've met in my when I say are best, I mean like how I judge people in terms of friendliness, work ethic, principles, values, culture, food, everything. My favorite people in the world by far, people from Mexico. Yeah, just the most awesome people. You know, I've come to just genuinely appreciate and admire them, especially over the last couple of years, having worked, you know, so closely with folks in Mexico. It's a fucking awesome country. And they've got a cool scene as well. Like nice. Music wise, there's a bunch of underground stuff there that's awesome. And of course,
Very cool.
Brujeria paying tribute to them is also badass. So even if they do it in a slightly underhanded way, what is the scene like right now in Iowa? Because I would also imagine, like, you guys being signed to a German label suggests to me that whatever the scene is like in Iowa or in the rest of the US, you kind of like a band on the outside looking in.
Yeah, that feels about right. I feel like we've always kind of been that band to a degree. The scene here is good overall. It's generally the bands we play with aren't metal at all. It's mostly kind of more of an indie crowd. We do have a really close group of friends that we play with. They're called Traffic Death. They're kind of like a thrash kind of crossover band, but they're really good. And we play with those guys. There's a lot of stuff kind of more underground that we don't get to play with. They kind of more play DIY spaces and things like that. And so they don't really play venues like we do at this point. So it's kind of hard to say. I feel like the leanings are a little bit more borderline new metal here and kind of hardcore. But it's not so much rooted in metal. And I can't think of a band that's doing anything close to what we're doing here at all. And I feel like that's kind of been the case the entire time we've been a band. I was interesting, or at least Des Moines, where we're from, is a very interesting place where it's kind of like, well, they've got that covered, so no one else needs to do that. I feel like that's this place. It's just like there's no competition, which is weird. Like, it'd be great to play with another band that is kind of adjacent to us at all, but it just doesn't happen. So yeah, it's kind of weird.
I was about to say, which does feel bizarre to me because, I obviously mentioned a bunch of bigger bands, but there are a lot of smaller bands in that vein. Or I could even see you guys, going over really well with a, reasonably avant-garde, metal band. Sure. I would say there's even some borderline black metal bands where you could, would you guys appeal to the crowd? I mean, I'm necro as can be, hence the fucking name of the show of the podcast, and I love you guys, and actually so is my friend. I mean, that guy that I referenced on the review, I mean, he's Mr. Black Metal, and it was him who was like dropped me a line as like, have you listened to this Druids album? And I was like, I heard the single, I liked it, but I hadn't really spent too much time with the rest of the record. And he's like, listen to it, it's one of the best albums of the year. And wow. The fact that he said it, normally when it comes to anything that doesn't involve worshiping the devil, corpse paint, and screaming, it's quite a job to get him across the threshold. But the fact that he liked you guys suggests to me that maybe it's time to reach out. Maybe it's time to build a network. I mean, I was going to say, like, these bands that you guys are touring with, is that by choice? Is it just the fact that you've not necessarily had the opportunities to play with bands that are kind of closer to the scene or closer to your style of music?
Yeah, I would say it's probably more the latter. I think I feel like we really haven't had the opportunity to tour as much as we'd like with bands we would like to tour with. Pardon me. We've done a few things with bands that are kind of similar, but it's usually we share, the same booking agency, that type of thing. And, they're great bands, and they've become good friends with us, when we do these things, because we don't like touring with assholes. So we like to tour with people that are genuinely just cool people playing music. And that's the whole name of the game. So, but yeah, we really haven't done that. I mean, man, it'd be killer to play with some black metal bands and stuff. Like we like that stuff, it'd be really awesome. It's just not an opportunity that's been presented to us. Inflation here is insane right now, so it's made it even harder to go travel and make a little bit of money, to put in the gas tank. So it's just been kind of tricky to try and figure out and navigate post-COVID stuff. Venues are booked out way in advance. It's really hard to get on tours. And I don't know why that is. I really don't. And back to your point about your friend, that introduced you to us, which thank you to him, because otherwise we wouldn't be talking. But, it's an interesting thing about this band is you can put us on any bill, at least in our experience, and we'll somehow walk away with people that are like, I don't like this stuff at all, but I like you guys. And they always end up walking away with like a shirt or like a record or something. And it's kind of crazy to me that somehow we managed to grab people. I don't really know what that says about us, or like, I mean, we're not engineering anything. Obviously, we're just like playing the stuff we make. So, any band that sounds cool and would be a great group to play with, of people, like, we're open to it. And I wish we had those opportunities, because I feel like with this record in particular, I'm really bummed that we weren't able to kind of really get out there and promote it and play the songs for people outside of like a few state radius. So we've done some out of town stuff. We played Desert Fest earlier this year in New York, and that went very well. But it's just like, I wish we could have more opportunities like that, because I think if we were given the license to do that sort of thing, I think that I think a lot of people would dig what we're doing. So just kind of a bummer.
I would say 100%. I think if you guys can get in front of the right audiences, I'm not kidding when I say this. I think you guys could be absolutely massive. I mean, there's enough talent on the show on Shadowwork that is, what it reminds me of a little bit. I had him on the podcast a couple of months ago. There was a band out of Australia who, I don't know whether you know them, Alchemist, and they were always a band that I remember seeing them live, and they were playing in this tiny little club called the Garage. And I was, the first thing I thought about as they got to like their second track, I was like, this band in a different world, if they weren't based out of Australia, they would be headlining stadiums. They would be absolutely fucking gigantic, because they don't sound like they belong in this club. They sound like they belong in in an arena. I haven't seen you guys live, but I mean, again, if you listen to the songs on Shadowwork, it sounds like a band that should be absolutely enormous. Which is
nice of you.
Which is, so my advice is fire your management. There we go. Stirring the pot in the Druids camp.
I mean, hey, man. I mean, it's a very nice thing for you to say. I mean, maybe you'll get to catch us one day, because I mean, I really feel like we definitely are having fun on stage, but we're also, we bring a lot of energy to the show. And it's not a forced energy or something. It's weird. If I try to play drums normally, like if I'm practicing, I can't not move the way I do when we play shows. So if that's any indication, it's just kind of like, it's a lot of movement on stage between the three of us, and kind of just like a crazy wall of sound that I don't know how we achieve with three people. It kind of blows my mind. But yeah, man, I would love to be in a kind of a different situation. I think we all would be. We would love to be playing in front of more people and to more diverse crowds and things like that. It's just kind of the hand we've been dealt, and we're just trying to navigate those waters pretty much at this point. So So
how did
keep putting out music.
How did the drum game start for you? How old were you when you picked up the drums?
I started officially probably around the age of 12 or 13. Haven't had a lesson or anything like that. Just kind of picked up, from friends and things like that. So got my first drum set. I was playing along to really embarrassing music like Korn and Limp Bizkit, because that was the time. So big $3 Bill Y'all fan.
Hey, $3 Bill Y'all had how many good songs? It had two cool songs on. One was Indigo Flow, which is excellent, and I do like that song. I still, it's a filthy pleasure, but I think Stuck is fucking brilliant.
Stuck is great. No, there's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. Yeah, so it's like stuff like that I was playing along to. Yeah.
But dude, you know how fucking good that drummer from Limp Bizkit actually is. I was watching, I watched that Trainwreck documentary on Netflix, and it made me go back and watch the Limp Bizkit show on YouTube. And I was just watching the drummer play. I was like, Jesus Christ, this guy's good. He's not a particularly technical drummer, but he's got such a effortless groove, and it's just like this. Like he there's just something to his swagger that almost just, I mean, it elevates otherwise reasonably basic and sometimes shitty sounding music. But I will also say, because I said this, I had Scott from Fallujah on the podcast, so people are going to get sick of me saying this, but I will contend once again for anybody who's watched that documentary, I defy you to be in a band, be on stage, see that kind of reaction, and then go, all right, guys, slow down. it's getting a little out of hand. If you don't stop
Yeah.
this being so raucous, we're leaving. It's like, no
It's
fucking
not gonna
chance.
happen.
Not
No
a
way,
chance.
man. No
I mean,
way.
you've been on stage. When you get that degree of energy from the audience, it is the most incredible feeling on the face of the earth. I remember just doing
Yep.
stupid fucking house fights when I was doing Thai boxing, and the biggest crowd that I ever walked out in front of was about 600, and just
wow.
when the people like applaud when you walk out, it's like, it's like people took 20 syringes full of adrenaline and stuck it into you. Now imagine 250,000 people absolutely losing their shit when you say a word. I watched that, and even if I'm not a particularly big Limp Bizkit fan, I got goosebumps, and it was the same with Korn. I mean, Korn I just generally just dislike, but it was like,
yeah.
I watched that show. I was like, this is fucking incredible. Like what they did to that crowd is absolutely nuts. Like, forget about all the other crazy shit that happened over the weekend, but just the energy that came out of that audience when they were on stage was mind blowing.
Yeah. It's insane. I can't even imagine the feeling. I mean, I played in the biggest crowd I've ever played in front of, not with Druids, but was with another band I was in called Radio Moscow. We played in front of 15,000 people in Spain, and that was pretty amazing. And that was a band that I was, just in with my friend, with my friends, just kind of like touring drummer, but not really a member. Playing in a band that I actually have a lot of investment in, I can't even imagine. I mean, I'm sure that would just be the best feeling. So it's incredible.
Yeah, and also here's another guilty pleasure, just as an aside. The Limp Bizkit. This will make me lose all credibility after this. I have to quit the podcast after people hear this. But "Thieves" by the Limp Bizkit cover of "Thieves," I think is fucking great. I just think, I mean, it's such a stupid, moronic cover of the song, but it works so well for what they use it for, which is basically just, we're going to get the crowd to go fucking insane, and we're just going to play one riff out of the song, and that's that.
yeah
But anyways, but yeah, so you were saying, so you were a young man with your spiked hair and your face piercings and stuff, playing Limp Bizkit. and then how did things progress from there?
I'm trying to think. Like, it pretty much was always just, I was a guitar player or a bass player in bands for a long time. So I would just play kind of on my own and kind of progressively get better. When I think it was about 2006, I think it was 2006. That's when I first started I started a hardcore punk band with a friend of mine. We called it Monstro. I know there's another band called Monster that came after us, but it was kind of like a weirdo. If you mixed I'm not a fan of this band, but like Terror. If you mix that with like,
dare you say anything bad about Terror on this?
No, podcast. It's just not. I'm sorry. It's just not my. It's not my vibe. I'm more of like a Kid Dynamite guy. I like it. I like it a little bit more playful, but I'm not a tough guy at all. So it's kind of like that, mixed with Botch. So it's kind of off-timey and weird. From there, we were a band for about 3 years. I joined that band, Radio Moscow. It was kind of more of like a psych blues type of band. Did that for a long time. And then in 2008, I bumped into Luke randomly, and we just started playing, and we wrote 3 songs in the first practice, and it's kind of crazy. And then we just kind of went with it. So we've been pretty much, a band since then. And so then that's been kind of my drumming journey. I've only played in bands on drums just a few times, but it's my preferred instrument for sure, as far as like between guitar, bass, and drums, and it's definitely drums. Setup is a pain in the ass, but beyond that, it's enjoyable. So.
I'm gonna mention one thing: the new Botch single. Firstly, is brilliant. Yes. But secondly, that's some tough guy music too. Like it is. Hearing that song. I mean, you can fuck a man up after a couple of spins. There's no two ways about it. Like if you listen to that in the gym, that's 25% added to every single rep that you're doing.
Just put on "We Are the Romans." You're good, man.
Yeah, I actually went back and properly got into that record. Very, very good stuff. The new, speaking of fuck you up music, again, just as a sidebar, the new Ken Mode. Oh my god! I mean, that is. I've always been a fan of Ken Mode, but this is the most pissed off, dark, nasty shit that they have ever recorded. I absolutely love it. Love it.
Hell yeah.
But I was going to ask you, like drumming style wise, like who are like your biggest influences, the people that you look up to most?
Yeah, kind of back to what we were talking about earlier. It's mostly rock drummers. I'm not. I love listening to metal, but I am not a metal player in the slightest. People that still kind of influence me today, but were kind of the people that got me into it, are like Jimmy Chamberlain from the Smashing Pumpkins, Abe Cunningham from the Deftones, Lars Ulrich from Metallica, undeniably. Not the best drummer, one of the most
I was about
creative
to say,
drummers.
so
Though.
you don't
Crazy.
you don't abide by people that say Lars isn't great.
No, I mean, he's in a legendary band. You can't take that away from him. I mean, he's a master arranger up to a point. They've had some misfires, of course. But yeah, the drummer of ISIS, what was his name? Aaron Harris, maybe. I think that's right. That's definitely an influence for a time. Aaron Gillespie from Underoath was kind of an influence on my drumming. I have a soft spot for that band growing up, but kind of listening to them. But I think his drumming is great. He's a very tasteful drummer. He knows when to lean back, but also when to kind of get crazy with it. And he's amazing to watch live as well. So, I kind of took the energy that he put out in terms of when he plays live. That's kind of what got incorporated to my, to my playing. Philip Selway to a degree, just in the sense from Radiohead, just in the sense that he's kind of like a drum machine. He's very like linear in his playing, but it's a good backbone. I think he certainly used to be a little bit more adventurous in his playing in the early records, but now it's just kind of like just keeping a steady beat. And I'm trying to remember that a little bit more, because I feel like I have to do a million things at one time to keep it interesting, it's fun for me to do it that way. But like a song like Hide is still busy to a degree, but it's kind of like sitting back, even though it's like very much in your face, like the drums and stuff. It's just more driving that way. So those are kind of my guys. Taylor Hawkins for sure. Foo Fighters, he was like the guy I saw and I was like, okay, I'm playing drums. So when I heard about his passing, that was like a huge upset for me. And Dave Grohl, obviously,
I was just about to say,
drummer.
Who's drumming. Yeah. I've always, again, as cult, necro, and grim as the show generally is, one drummer who I've always had a lot of time for was Dave Grohl. I thought his work on Songs for the Deaf is absolutely fucking incredible.
It's awesome.
It's such a distinct way that he approached that record. Like you can, you listen to it and you can straight away hear that it's Dave Grohl playing. The drummers that you remind me of most listening to this new record, and it actually just gave me an idea, because as I was double checking myself here, I'm gonna give you an idea for a band you have to implore to take you out on tour, because I think that's the right band for you guys. Dale Crover and Cody Willis were the two drummers that your style reminded me of most. Because again, what I love about the mix on this album is that your drums are so prominent, but you have such a distinct way of playing. But those were the two. So Dale from Melvins, Cody from Big Business. Cody now,
not mad about that,
is in High on Fire. I didn't know that, but he joined High on Fire in last year. That's the band you guys need to go on the road with.
We would not contest that, man. We love High on Fire.
Yeah, I will make it happen. Awesome. So I can't make it. Unfortunately, I can't make it happen. But there must be a way we can hook you up with them somehow.
You can figure out a direct line to Matt Pike to get that to happen. I mean, that'd be absolutely incredible.
I'll tell you what I will do. If I ever have him on the podcast, without a doubt, I'll mention it.
Oh man,
I'll say I owe it to you guys as a favor. And also, Matt, you seem like a dude with good taste. Maybe not so much in clothes, but the rest of it, you're on your game. So it's you have to take these guys out with you. Another band you might not you might go over well with is Crowbar.
Oh yeah, we actually just played with them 2 weeks ago. They liked us. It was cool. Yeah, we played with them. We opened up for them. We're direct support. They were killer. They were great.
They're awesome. And Kirk is one of the best people I've ever met. He's such a fucking cool guy.
Super friendly. Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievably nice. And the again, like there's certain people that you can criticize, but there's certain other people. If I hear someone speak ill of his voice, that's,
Oh
we're going to
man.
the mattresses immediately. There's no question about it. That guy's voice. There's the dudes from Lost in Vegas, when they were reviewing Planets Collide. I said to my girlfriend, like, if I love this channel, but if they say one bad thing. And I think the song had started, and they were like, "Oh man, you can hear the pain in his voice straight away." So I was like, "Yeah, you guys, you better say that." Um,
Exactly.
I was going to ask you, the German record label. How did that come about? Because some of the stuff
Yeah.
that you guys have put out previously, you put out independently. Um,
Yep.
I saw one of the records was put out by the same label that put out Traffic Death, but that was the only other
Yeah.
release that they put out. And once again, it boggles my mind as to why you guys would ever struggle. I don't know if you did, but why or how you would ever struggle to find a label to put you out? Because I can think of 10 labels that, right now that should fucking have their heads red that you slip through their
Man.
fingers. But how did that deal come about?
You're very kind for saying that. It's not for lack of trying, man. Like I'm trying to think, from Cycles of Mobium to Monument, or right before Monument, I think we were sending out CDs, MP3s, like to every place possible. We got rejections from Metal Blade and Nuclear Blast, and I think we just like straight up didn't hear anything from pretty much everybody else. So it's just kind of like, you got to try. But we had a hard time. The guy from TP Records has seen us play a couple of times. He's actually from Des Moines, oddly enough. But he saw us open for Kylesa a few years ago, and then he saw us in New York for Desert Fest. So it was kind of a trip. But I feel like we would have been a good fit for that. But
by the way,
Pelagic
I was just about to say, Kylesa, another great band for you guys to
oh,
do,
absolutely.
take on the world with.
Yeah, man. I don't know if they're still a band anymore. Did they
No,
break
I
up?
don't think that they are actually.
Yeah. Ultraviolet was awesome. I really liked that record a lot.
What was the record I
Yeah.
loved so much? But yeah, sorry. You were saying?
Oh no, no. So yeah, basically Pelagic had reached out. I believe it was right before we put out Monument, I think, and they kind of approached us, and we were like, I don't know. We're just gonna kind of see what else is out there, and time came, to put out Shadow Work, and we were going to start working on a new record, and it was kind of like, well, there were a couple little options, but none of them sounded as appealing as the Pelagic folks. And so kind of looked at their lineup, and we're definitely probably the only band of our kind on that label. But I like what they do, because it's kind of a more progressive label. I mean, the Ocean's kind of a weird heavy band. You've got like Karen Park, who does a lot of more electronica like type stuff, like pop stuff. But she gets pretty experimental. You got Lustmord, I think, is on that. Like, so it's just like a weird conglomeration of artists, and it just seemed to kind of make sense. And so it's been a pretty good working relationship overall. It's kind of a bummer that it's just a little expensive to get our records over here for us to carry around with us. But that aside, I mean, the records, like the minute we saw them, we were like blown away with how much like quality is in those records, from the gatefold to the printed sleeves, the vinyl itself, sounds great, looks great. So we've been very happy with the end result, and they've been very nice to us, and they've given us a lot of praise on the record, which is really cool. So and they've gotten our name out there. It's great distribution, so it's really hard to complain. But yeah, so far so good, man. It's been working well for us. I'm hoping we can get over to Europe, in the next.
I was just about to say, would they be able to engineer you guys coming out to Europe? Because again, there's an awful lot of festivals, as all over the summer. And that's a perfect opportunity for you guys. And you guys are good summer music as well. It's like I could see, again, I could see you go over well in the summer. People are having, have had a couple of beers. They're, enjoying the rays, which you get for a full, 2 weeks. Yeah. And then for the 2 weeks that you have it, they're complaining about the heat and saying climate change is killing us all, and then it goes away again. But yeah, it's a good it would be a good spot for you guys to be is in Europe and in the UK in the summers.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can make that happen. They, the best they can kind of do is put bugs in different agencies' ears at this point. I've got a friend in France that I'm trying to figure out a way we can get over there next year, maybe on some festivals. We were confirmed for a festival and some other stuff in 2020, but that all got, obviously fell apart. But we were supposed to go tour the UK and Europe with a band called Beast Wars I think they're from New Zealand, maybe.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, so that fell through, but not to say it won't happen. I really would love to. We'd all love to get over there and play. So we'll see what happens.
That Kylesa record, by the way, Static Tensions. That was the record that I
That's a good
liked
one.
the most. Yeah, phenomenal album. And one of the things I also love about them is the two drummers. Same as what Melvins had when they did the Melvins Big Business crossover, which is, in my view, some of the best stuff they ever put out. But so you mentioned earlier that you guys are potentially already starting to work on new material, and you could have something new in the pipeline already.
We're very far from that. We've talked about. It's a conversation about thinking about, talking about, writing new
we're going to have a meeting to arrange the next meeting about the meeting where we're going to have the meeting.
We've got a lot kind of on our plate for the rest of the year. We've got some shows and some things like that we're just trying to wrap up for the year, and then kind of just take a second to ground over the winter. We always take a break during the winter over Christmas, and for at least a month or so to kind of just be at home, not worry about anything with the band, and then come back kind of refreshed. And then we start to probably, pick apart some things here. There've been some riffs that have been sent around that are really, really cool. And that have gotten me excited, but I would not say we are anywhere near a completed song or anything like that. So we've got a ways to go before I think we'll have another record anytime soon. But this shadow work was just kind of a big undertaking. We really put a lot of time into it. So we're just kind of enjoying playing these songs right now, and then we'll get to new material when it feels right. But we're kind of like the thing you were saying about tunnel vision and sticking to one style and all that stuff. It's easy to psych yourself up, like you got to keep going, you got to write stuff, and when you force it, it just doesn't. It doesn't work well. I mean, I think I can think of about 3 or 4 songs we scrapped when we were initially writing Shadow Work, or what would become Shadow Work, that just were like in that mindset of just like we got to keep going, and it didn't sound right. Nothing sounded right, and we've already kind of hit those snags a little bit too. I mean, that happens with every recording or writing session. It's just kind of like you kind of got to get the bugs out a little bit and kind of figure out your direction. So it's just one of those things. Hide was, I think, the first one out of the bunch that was written. So that was written pre-pandemic. So that song is very old to us at this point. I'm glad people dig it, man. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to write new stuff. I'll just say that.
Good. And as I said, if it can convince not an naysayer, but if it can convince somebody who's taste more to the necro side of things, like my friend, then I definitely think like I said, I wouldn't just blow smoke for the sake of doing so, but I genuinely think you guys have created something really special, and you should be extremely proud of it. So thanks for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate your time. I had a blast talking to you, and I hope I'll catch up with you again down the road.
That sounds great, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Most of all, thank you very much for giving up your lunch break to come and talk to me.
Hey, man, a pleasure. I'm not usually the one that gets to do the interviews, so it's like really fun for me to do this sort of thing. So good. I'm glad to be here. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I had a great time. I'll and like I said, hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Sounds good, man. Take it easy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Big thanks and a shout out to Keith for sacrificing no less than his lunch break to head over to his car and spend an hour with me. I had an absolute blast talking to him. That song that you just heard is a track called Ides Cone. It's off the record Shadowwork, and I highly recommend that you check it out if you haven't done so already. Not standard Into the Necrosphere fare, but based on the response I've seen so far from all of you, that doesn't really seem to matter. I think you guys are all open-minded enough to want to check this out. It is available on Pelagic Records. And if you go onto the Druids Bandcamp, as always, tell them that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. But like I said, big thanks to Keith for coming on the show. And I do think that if they can get onto a bigger tour, like if they can go and tour with somebody like High on Fire, or Big Business or Melvins, this band could be massive. So, speaking of massive bands, let's do a massive rundown of what has been an absolutely incredible month for heavy music releases. I will say that I probably am going to miss out a couple, so if I have missed out any, let me know in the comments or drop me a note on the socials and tell me what else I should be checking out. But these are a couple that have immediately kind of sprung to my attention and that I'm spending my time listening to right now. So take from that what you will. The first one is Goat Whore, the album Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven. We had Sammy Dewey on the podcast 2 episodes ago. I believe that Angels Hung from the Arches of Heaven is the 8th studio album by Goat Whore, and unsurprisingly, it is very much Goat Whore doing what they do and doing it very, very well. So if you're a fan of the band, if you've liked their previous stuff, you will enjoy this. I personally think it's a bit stronger than their last 2 releases. More of an emphasis on songs being a little bit catchier. I like the fact as well that they've brought back some of the darker stuff from the first record. So it's out right now on Metal Blade Records. As I said, if you're a fan of Goat Whore, it's a no-brainer. You definitely should be checking this out. Next up, we've got Black Math Horseman with a self-titled EP. It's available on Profound Law, who I have to say, alongside Season of Mist and Deborah Morty, are having an absolute vintage year for putting out high-quality music. This is the first record that Black Math Horseman has put out in 13 years. I personally wasn't familiar with their music previously, but it sounds to me a little bit like vintage Jefferson Airplane falling under the spell of Chelsea Wolfe and then collectively giving their hearts to Satan. Absolutely love it. I've spoken before about my preference when it comes to female fronted bands or women kind of being the prominent vocal in bands, and the uniqueness that they can bring to the table when it's done right. Black Math Horseman is a great example of that. No symphonic metal here. This is dark, psychedelic, really moody stuff, and just executed unbelievably well. Speaking of superb execution, Abduction have put out Black Blood, the follow-up to 2019's excellent All Pain is Penance. That is out right now on Candlelight Records. It features the mighty AV, who I've had on the podcast about 5 episodes ago. I personally believe this is the album that will catapult Abduction to the very upper echelons of the UK black metal scene. It is a solid record where there is not a single track that puts its foot wrong. I have played some of the stuff off of it already. I've also reacted to some of the singles off of it. But 7 tracks, 45 minutes of just absolute blasting, brilliant black metal. Speaking of UK black metal, the Antichrist Imperium Volume 3, more a reminder because I've already done an in-depth review of this, but one of my favorite records, if not my favorite record of 2022, features members of Akakoko, Voices, and Werewolves delivering what I believe in each man's case is a career best performance. It is out now on Apocalyptic Witchcraft Records. You absolutely should not be missing this, no matter what style of music you listen to. We also then have Mother of Graves, who have put out Where the Shadows Adorn on Wise Blood Records. This is a band that I have featured on the News Rant, and I really enjoyed the singles, but I absolutely love the album. I think when you listen to everything collectively, it really strikes you how good these guys actually are. The other thing that I would say is in terms of describing their music, for those of you that don't stick around for the News Rant segment, in which case you should be ashamed, think melodic death doom in the vein of early Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride, but kind of dragged kicking and screaming into 2022. And then finally, probably one of my biggest surprises of this month has been a band out of Philadelphia called Daiva. They've put out an album on 20 Buck Spin called Through Sheer Will and Black Magic. I would describe them as the bastard offspring of Slayer, Destroyer 666, Impaled Nazarene, and Power Trip. It is first tier blackened thrash metal from start to finish, huge riffs, even bigger hooks, an absolutely pitch-perfect vocal performance by their singer, Edward Gonay. Just a fucking fantastic record, and one, again, that I suggest you put to the very top of your rotation. I'm going to play a song off of that right now. This is Polluting the Sanctuary by Daiva.
Revolution
Polluting the Sanctuary by Daiva. The record is called Through Sheer Will and Black Magic, and it's available on 20 bucks spin. Make sure that you check it out. Make sure you check out all of those records that I just mentioned, because they are absolutely fantastic. And what a fucking year this is turning out to be. I know I've said it many times before, but it's getting harder and harder to condense this down to a top 30 list, let alone top 20. So I've given myself the breathing room of doing 3 best of episodes next year. But even then, it's a bit of a struggle. Like, I'm having to take out anything that's an EP now. And I might even have to tackle that separately, because there's also a bunch of really great EPs coming out in 2022. But let's talk now about the latest goings on in the metal world, as I send the weak, woke, and cowardly running for cover with my weekly news rant. All right, friends, so we are going to mix up the running order of things a little bit on this installment of the news segment. I want to talk first and foremost about something that dropped yesterday. And full disclosure, I'd actually done a full recording of the news rant, but decided it required a second take because we absolutely have to talk about this. Host is a band that has been started by Greg McIntosh and Nick Holmes, and as the name suggests, it is really a continuation of probably the most controversial Paradise Lost release. I have spoken about it many times on the podcast. I love it. I loved it when it came out, and I love it still. And so when I found out about this, I was doing fucking cartwheels in the house because, I've always hoped that they would do something like this again. But at the same time, I get that, especially in the direction that they've gone on recent records, it doesn't necessarily seem like it's going to be a feasible idea. So, fair play to Greg. He didn't allude to anything when he was on the podcast. I don't know whether this was already a plan. I would imagine that it would be, because, the song that they've got here is, reasonably, fleshed out. But, man, I'm so fucking excited about this. I can't tell you guys. I'm literally, jumping up and down for joy just at the idea of a record like this. We're going to listen to the song. I have already heard it, but we do need to hear just at least a minute so that those of you that aren't aware of the news yet can get excited along with me. But it says that they've got a new album coming out in February next year. That'll be on Nuclear Blast Records. So, yeah, super, super excited about it. This is what it sounds like. The single that they've released is a track called Tomorrow's Sky. Now, some of you may agree, some of you may not agree. That is 60 seconds of perfection, in my opinion. Absolutely perfect. Everything about it works. The drum beat is great. I love that kind of electro drum beat. That beat in particular, I just love. I love the synths. Like, there's a really kind of massive sound to the synths. I listened to it on my hi-fi. When I gave it its maiden spin. And the song sounds like, the production, the recording, everything sounds huge. And then you've got Nick doing just absolute vintage genius Nick vocals. If it's not coming through properly, as you can tell, I'm very, very, very excited about this. I've as I said, always hoped they would do something like this. I'm so glad they've done it again, or they've returned to that sound. One thing that I would comment is pretty amusing. With music like this and with bands like Paradise Lost, they always do tend to draw some real fucking idiot fans. I looked on their Facebook page, and some fucking jackass, everybody's like writing similar sentiments to what I've just said. Yeah, returning to the sound that they had on Host, blah, blah, blah. Some jackass writes, this music is actually not a return to host. It has its roots in 80s disco goth music. It's like, dude, let people enjoy themselves. Let people have a moment to be happy without you trying to fucking educate them with your pontificating bullshit. I remember years back, it was the same with Melakesh. It was when they announced, can't remember which record it was, but by that point I was already friends with Ashmedi, and it was on his, I think it was just think on his Facebook page as opposed to his actual profile. So he writes, new albums coming out, blah blah blah, and I, kind of jokingly say it's about time, brother. Looking forward to hearing it. This fuckface comments, what high art takes time to develop. So I wrote back to him and said, really, I didn't know that's how music recording worked. I thought that Ashmedi just walked into the studio and poof, the album appeared. But anyway, fuck faces aside, let's get back to another minute of this. But yeah, as I said, unequivocally, we're listening to this on YouTube right now. This earns a strong like. Decision, and you're thinking, dead or alive. You're dreaming, dead or alive. 50 out of 10 is what that song gets. Now, let's talk about another single that's been put out by a band that used to get me similarly excited. However, since the release of probably 2 albums back, that release being Old Star, and of course the band being Darkthrone, I think they've more or less lost me. I thought that Old Star was virtually unlistenable. Eternal Hails was it felt to me like we'd kind of gone to a place where they were starting to troll me as a fan. And Caravan of Broken Ghosts, which is the first single to be taken off of their new record, Astral Fortress, which comes out later this month, I have been less than impressed with. But we're going to listen to it right now because we may find ourselves recording a true Road to Damascus moment where I listen to it and I suddenly decide that I was completely wrong and actually it's a great song. I doubt that's going to happen, but we're about to find out. So for those of you that aren't aware yet, this is the first single off the forthcoming record by Darkthrone. As I said, the album is Astral Fortress. It's out on Peaceful Records on the 28th of October. The song is called Caravan of Broken Ghosts, and let's give it a minute. So if I had to give the song any kind of credit, it would be that it's better than the first single they put out of Eternal Hails. I mean, that to me was egregious. This is not bad, but I ask this question. Would there be any sort of clamor for this song had it not been released under the Dark Throne banner? That's my question. If you strongly believe that had this come out as, Johnny Fuckhead or or whatever, some random band, a new band that no one had ever heard of before, put out this song, would you be as excited about it? And if you would be as excited about it as I see a lot of folks are about this tune, then great. Then then it's a legit love and like that you have for this. But I personally happen to think that the vast majority of people would ignore this had it not been, were it not a Dark Throne song. And I just feel like, as much as I don't believe in bands repeating themselves, you guys know my view on that. I'd much rather a band do something that they feel strongly about than put out something that's disingenuous to them. But there's a loss of there's a lifelessness to these new Dark Throne songs, and it goes all the way back to Old Star. It doesn't work for me. I was on board with the Underground Resistance. I was on board with Circle the Wagons. I've been on board with most of the sound changes that they've done. Hate Them. I as you guys know, my favorite Dark Throne record. But whether it's Blaze in the Northern Sky, whether it's Panzerfaust, whether it's The Cult Is Alive, I've been on board for every different thing that they've done, because there's always been like an emotion. There's like a palpable spirit to the music that just does not. It just seems to be completely absent from the new stuff. The new stuff to me feels like these guys are just going through the motions. That's how I feel. I know I'm probably in the minority. I know there's a lot of you, because I see social media and I see what people are saying. I know there's a lot of you that think that it's a great song and are very excited about the record. I'm still keen to hear what the record sounds like. There might be a couple of gems on there, but so far my expectations remain very, very low indeed. Like I said, that riff is not bad, but then you compare it to something like this, and we'll give this a minute. Now we'll do a compare and contrast: a minute of this versus a minute of Caravan of band who would remain unsigned if they weren't called Dark Throne. And then you tell me, am I wrong? Am I just stuck in my ways? I don't think so. Like I said, I'm not one of those people that think only the first three records, the Unholy Trilogy, is good. But I do expect a bit more than I'm hearing from them right now. But anyway, this is one of my favorite tracks off of Hate Them. So let's give it a minute, and then we'll go straight back to Caravan of Broken Ghosts. That is genius, my friends. Now, immediate point of comparison. And back to the genius. And once again, I want to stress, I'm not, this is not a case of me saying I wish they'd made records that all sounded like Hate Them. That's not the case at all. Again, I was on board for Plague Wielder. I was on board for every single different thing that they've done. But to me, it's that there's a sense of excitement, and there's a sense of energy, like palpable energy, that is just gone from their music. So that's my thoughts. That's my take on the new Darkthrone. I know many people like it. But I am not sold whatsoever. I'm going to actually check out one other song, or let you guys hear one other song real quick, because I know that this is not something that's going to be picked up on the Metal Storm or Blabbermouth. You guys will have remembered, actually, funnily enough, it doesn't seem to be on YouTube either. I was about to say, you guys would have remembered that Wathroch, a band that I featured about probably a year ago, they've been picked up by the guys on, I think it's Hammerheart Records, and they're putting out their new album, Odium, early next year. What I played you was absolutely fantastic. But they've now put out a single, and it sounds fucking incredible. So there we go, I found it. So the song is called Tumor. I was correct in that it's on Hammerheart Records. They describe themselves as inspired by extreme soundscapes, and I completely agree with that. They feature my buddy Knossos of the excellent Greek black metal band Utkana, who I genuinely hope are going to be putting out some new music very soon. But it says, Wathroch are a new band from the ever-creative Greek scene, created something fresh and new, filled with darkness, a monster of an album that has a sonic attack unlike you have ever heard before. The artwork and the recordings strongly contribute to an overall overwhelming experience. Imagine the soundscape experience of Septic Flesh clashing with the furiosity of an Nathrak. I 100% agree with that description, but you guys tell me what you think. This is their first single off of the forthcoming record, Odium, as I mentioned, and the song is called Tumor. That is fucking superb. And I've heard a couple of other things off this record. All of it has been absolutely excellent. But I wanted to give you guys a taste of that. I'm definitely going to try and get Knossos back on the podcast to talk about this. I mean, it's been a high time that he comes back on anyway. I think I wanted him back on like at the back end of last year. So he'll come on early next year, I think, to talk about it. But this is top tier stuff in my opinion. And I'm very excited to hear the rest of the album. Okay, so let's head over now to Metal Storm. We start off with the news that Dodheim's God are cancelling their European tour with Keep of Kalessin and Cadaver. It says here, if you were planning to see them live, you're in bad luck, as the plug has been pulled. It says here, the band comments, the fat lady is singing, it's a wrap, Jim Morrison is calling out the end, done, down, concluded, over with, that's all she wrote, folks. So what went wrong? Ultimately, there is no single factor, but some of these factors ended up carrying a lot more weight than for the death of it just going through the tour. The truth is, I don't want to swap the instrumentalization of reason for a speculative mind whose only purpose is shifting the blame around. The bottom line is what it is. The 2022 tour is no more, and I'm very truly sorry for whichever part I played in its failure. I don't know if the person who wrote that was drinking when they wrote it, but why they had to fucking comment in such cryptic fashion, I have no idea. Rivers of Nile part ways with their vocalist. No doubt he has left the band because he can no longer live with the shame of having been partly responsible for one of the biggest jokes of a death metal record I've ever heard, The Work by Rivers of Nile. What a sad state of affairs it is with that band. A band who used to be so unbelievably good, and then these last two records have just been a complete pile of fucking crap. Sakis Tolis has shared a new single online. It says here Sakis Tolis has revealed a new standalone single entitled Ancestral Whispers, which is performed and produced by him and mixed and mastered by Jens Borgen. It features guest female vocals, I am not going to attempt to pronounce that lady's name, and guest bagpipes by Georgios Nikos. You can check out the song below. I really liked that Sakis Tolis solo record. I did feel like it was something that, he could very easily have released as Rotting Christ, but for whatever reason he has chosen not to. I do hope that these solo endeavors don't take away from the fact that, frankly, I think we're due another Rotting Christ album pretty soon. But let's hear what Ancestral Whispers sound like. I don't think that's too bad. I can definitely see this being more suitable for solo work, because this is a reasonable departure from the stuff that Sakis does with Rotting Christ. I mean, it does in some ways feel like just a real kind of deep extension of the sound of A Dead Poem and Sleep of the Angels. Maybe with a bit of modern flair sprinkled in. But I like it. I mean, the song sounds cool. The production is really great. I think that woman works really, really well as a backup singer to him. He sounds good. Like I said, I just hope it's not going to get Sakis' eye off the ball when it comes to Rotting Christ, because I do believe that the world is in dire need of another Rotting Christ record, particularly one in the vein of the preceding three before the last record. I thought the last record was good. I mean, it has some songs on that are just absolutely incredible, but as a whole body of work, it didn't quite grab me the same as some of those Greek records. But let's give this another 30 seconds. Definitely something quite positive about that song. I don't know whether you guys are picking it up also, but I would say if I think back to my conversation that I had with him, which if you haven't seen that yet, make sure that you go back and watch that episode. But if I think back to my conversation with him, he definitely went through an interesting, I think, personal journey during the lockdowns and things like that. And I think he came out feeling much more, or having a far greater appetite for life maybe than he had going in. That was my takeaway from it, and I'm getting that from that song too. There's like a I don't know if I would call it hopeful, but maybe that's the feeling that I get from it. There's a real optimism to that song, which has no place in Rotting Christ's music, but it's still a cool song. Okay, great news, folks. Gojira have a new song called "Our Time Is Now." The headline here being, if you've decided there's not enough Gojira in your life, you can listen to their new song, Our Time Is Now. No thanks. That band is fucking dead to me. Next up, we have got Neptunian Maximalism. They've announced a record called Finis Gloria Mundi, which is a live release. No strangers to live releases, it says here. Neptunian Maximalism. Have another one coming with Finis Gloria Mundi, due on November the 25th via I Voidhanger Records, a label that puts out some pretty good stuff. The album was recorded by Nico van Montfort at Doornsroos in the Netherlands. You can listen to ZAR Empowering the Furba below. No idea what this band sounds like, so it may well be trash. And also, it's a Bandcamp link. And I would hate to be responsible for people's windscreens being shattered, so not going to listen to that. However, Botch have announced a new show, have announced their first shows since their reunion. Now, some of you will remember that I rather enjoyed that Botch single that came out not too long ago. And as those that watch this on YouTube might have spotted, I've looked it up and listened to it many times on YouTube, so hence why it's high up in my search history. And even though we've already featured it on the News Rants, we're going to listen to it again because it is fucking badass. Absolutely brilliant. And by the way, if that is not on your gym playlist, then I'm going to ask whether you even train when you're at the gym, because that's 25% added to every single rep, at least. I can't fucking wait to hear more music by this band. Obviously, I've gone back and I've listened to the old stuff. Very, very cool, but this is something totally different to me. I personally think this takes a fucking steamy dump on the classics from yesteryear. And as I said, I'm super excited about it. Great vocals. I love that riff. I love the vibe. I love the swagger to the song. And as I said, it's just manly. It pumps me up. Makes me want to go to the gym. Speaking of the gym, by the way, if any of you guys lift weights and train and stuff like that, let me strongly recommend you check out a channel on YouTube by a dude called Will Tennyson. He's a very entertaining cat, does a bunch of stuff there about, where he'll do like a particular diet for a week or whatever and tell you how it goes. But he's recently started training with a load of bodybuilders, and it's really interesting, the videos that he's recorded with them, listening to the stuff that they have to say about training. There's one video that he does with Kai Green, which if you watched Generation Iron, you'll know the name, but very, very interesting guy. And then he's also done one with Phil Heath, and Phil Heath is a guy who's won Mr. Olympia 7 times. He's widely regarded as the man with the most balanced physique in the history of bodybuilding. I mean, he looks incredible. He was talking to Will about basically a different approach to training, where everything is very slow and deliberate. He talks about mastering a movement, even if you're doing it with the lightest weight. And kind of commanding, being in a situation where you fully command the movement. Which, if you watch the video, I'm probably not doing it justice, but you'll see what I mean. I applied some of that to my training, and it was like someone was fucking wringing a wet towel out on the floor. I was going down to really low weights, considering or comparing to what I was doing previously. But that video blew my mind, and that way of training is what I have now adopted as my fucking religion at the gym going forward. If you do train, like I said, do yourself a favor and go check out that video. Phil Heath, Will Tennyson, excellent video. It's about 18 minutes long, but his approach to training and the things that he says about how to do the movements and how to approach each workout is incredible. Back to music though. Abyssic have premiered a new track off their 3rd album. Doom metal group Abyssic have shared the new track Mirror of Shadow. The track is the first to be revealed from the band's 3rd album, Brought Forth in Iniquity, set for international release on October the 28th via Osmos Productions, big fan of Osmos Productions. I'm glad it feels to me like they're busy making a bit of a comeback, because they were very quiet for a while, like quiet to a point where I wondered whether they even still existed. And they've been responsible for putting out so many great releases over the years, so I'm super happy that they're putting out new stuff. Anyway, it says here, the band comments, finally, Abyssic's third opus is here, and the long wait is over. The music is much more violent, faster, and the lyrics are even more haunting than the last two albums. The orchestration is beyond everything they've done so far, and even more beautiful than ever. So, in other words, Brought Forth in Iniquity is faster and more brutal than and more beautiful than ever. All we can say is expect the unexpected. I've never heard Abyssic before, but very excited to hear this based on that description. So let's see if it lives up to the hype. Very interesting stuff. That I part of me is kind of going, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the symphonic stuff in music, but there's a part of me that is curious to hear where the song goes next. So I'm actually going to jump to the midpoint, and then we'll hear what's going on there. But there's definitely there's potential there. Let's put it that way. I'm not completely sold, but there's definitely potential. So let's go to the halfway mark of the song and hear what's going on there. Not much difference from where we were when we started, but yeah, I'm still going to go back and I'm going to give that a proper run through, because it's not blowing me away, but like I said, there's just something that's making me think, that song deserves a proper, it deserves closer examination. Okay, next up we've got a High Command, who have shared a second track from their forthcoming full-length album, Eclipse of the Dual Moons. It arrives on the 25th of November via Southern Lord and was produced by Seth Manchester. The new track, Imposing Hammers of Cold Sorcery, is a hefty and atmospheric track which tells the story of a perilous quest. The band shares Imposing Hammers of Cold Sorcery is a sonic conquest of ancient lore, a testimony of fortitude peering into the eyes of obliteration. Following an attack from a celestial horde, the four realms are cloaked in apprehension. On a fabled whim of the long-forgotten Guild of Sage, stop playing so much fucking Path of Exile and just get on with the goddamn music, guys. I've not heard of High Command before, but Southern Lord are another of those labels where, generally speaking, I'm interested if they're putting something out, because the old quality control at Southern Lord HQ at least seems to be reasonably on task. So let's hear what this sounds like. Some strong Big Four vibes there, particularly Slayer and Megadeth. And maybe it's just me picking it up, but I'm definitely picking up some vibes there, and I'm not hating it. I think it's going to be it'll be made or broken by the quality of the vocals, I think, and clearly it's going to have to pick up in heft at some point. But it's a 7 minute and 40 seconds track. So again, let's jump to the 4 minute mark, and let's hear where we've landed. But so far, not bad. Right, thumbs up, definitely thumbs up. I love those vocals, and I like that. I like that drum beat as well, like very, very vintage drum beat. It sounds like the fucking drum beat off of "I Was Made for Loving You," I guess, but it just works. I think it's excellent. I'm going to give it another 30 seconds, but High Command have absolutely gone on the list of records that I want to check out. That is badass. Well done, lads, from High Command. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing the rest of that record. Still getting those Big Four vibes there, but that's not a bad thing. When it's done that well, it's a very good thing, as a matter of fact. Okay, Death Angel are preparing to write a new album. Generally speaking, I love me some Death Angel. I'm very sad still about the fact that they hate my favorite Death Angel song to yell, or for them to play live anyway, and they don't play it live as a result. The song, of course, is called Bored, but I mean, it is such a fucking cool tune. There's such a great vibe to it. Like, you know, it's super simple, but there's this undercurrent that just builds up, and especially when you see it live, it's fantastic. So why they don't want to play it anymore, I don't know. But anyways, Black Lava have released a new single and video. Not going to talk about that because there'll be Black Lava aplenty on next week's show. Make sure that you guys tune in for that one, because Rob Watkins is a fucking top-notch dude. We had a really fun conversation, and I'm very excited to see what happens with Black Lava. Season of Mist clearly believe in them because they're throwing a lot of money behind them, at least from what I can tell, with the production values of the videos and stuff like that, and deservedly so. They're a superb band, and that conversation next week is going to be excellent also. All right, Soul Grinder have released Spirits Asylum. On the 11th of November, German extreme metalers Soul Grinder will leave a trail of destruction in the form of their new album, Anthems from the Abyss. You can now get a first taste with a video for Spirits Asylum. Don't know Soul Grinder. The logo looks a little bit like somebody made it in art school back when they first discovered death metal. But let's hear what it sounds like.
Shadows of all ghosts and torn apart souls, destroyed and
that main riff through the verse is absolutely atrocious. I mean, I don't know how you write something like that in 2022 and think it's going to cut the mustard. I mean, literally like dun 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 dun. Firstly, how many fucking bands have done that over the years? And secondly, could you not be somewhat more creative? But then, when they have that little kind of break chorus thing straight after that, and I'm going to go back about 20 seconds. We'll listen to it again. That actually is pretty good. I think that's where that actually is a nice contrast to the verse, and it sort of. I was teetering on the brink of just switching it off and going, this fucking stinks, and moving on. But then when that bit comes in, I was like, okay, this is actually quite good.
Your shattered soul, you're lost and only way to.
I mean, the reality of it is I'm never going to listen to this because I can barely get time to listen to everything brilliant that I want to listen to. So I think, unfortunately, Soul Grinder is going to be one of those bands that, kind of enter a very crowded field and, they'll have their fans, no doubt. I will not necessarily be one of them. I don't hate it. But again, the bar has been raised in 2022. Last one on Metal Storm, and then we'll head over to the Democrats Guide to Rock Music. Black metal band Moynok have released a new video of their latest single, Throes of Ardent Disposition, from the album A Place for Ash. The band comments, Throes of Ardent Disposition is a song about personal growth and difficulty of not just living with grief, but overcoming it on the way to something greater. It feels natural to dwell on negative emotions, but one can't move forward without first processing and exercising the malignancies that hold them back. I'm pretty sure that my brother Nathan Glover of Gravere sent me Moynok as a band I needed to check out, and I've not had a chance to do so yet, but they're on my list. So this is probably as good a time as any to give this a quick listen. I think that A Place for Ash record came out back in September. But anyway, I'll shut up. Let's hear what it sounds like. Alright, let's also fucking hurry the fuck up before I lose my mind. I hate these intros on these videos. There's something about that opening riff that reminds me a little bit of Aosoth in a very good way. I'm a fucking huge fan of Aosoth. I'm still pissed off to this day about Aosoth's breaking up. But like I said, there's something about that opening riff that reminds me a bit of Aosoth, and then obviously the vocals kick in. That's pretty good as well. So I am liking what I'm hearing from Moynok at the moment. Yeah, I am without a doubt going to have to visit A Place for Ash, because that is fucking excellent. So kudos to Moynok. So pretty decent haul, actually, then, when it comes to new music. Undoubtedly, we're not going to hear anything worth listening to on the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music, but we'll find other things to occupy our time with there. But yeah, like I said, nice little haul of good music this week. New host was excellent. Dark Throne, Muck. Vothroch, very, very cool. Moynok, very, very cool. Yeah, there was some decent stuff this week. Over on Blabbermouth, we see that Rob Halford is talking about the upcoming Judas Priest album. It's another affirmation of what you love about Judas Priest. I've not really liked the last couple of Judas Priest records. I think when it comes to Judas Priest, I'm a one-and-done guy. Painkiller to me is the absolute best thing that they did. It's a completely perfect record. There's not a single note on that album that's not absolutely incredible. But then beyond that, there's nothing really that I ever really feel the need to go back to. There's like one or two songs here and there. I think there's a song called Judas is Rising off of Angel of Retribution. That's very good. But in the main, it's just not really anything that they've done that I get as excited about as I do Painkiller. Like Painkiller is a truly, influential record in my, I think it influenced a lot about how my music taste developed. But nothing else that they've put out has done anything like that for me. Lamb of God's Randy Blythe recalls his wilder days on new episodes from the Metalverse. It says here, Pandora's Metalverse station, which was launched just a few months ago as the hardest and heaviest place on the platform, is already becoming a favorite for hard rock and metal icons. When the station launched, Dave Mustaine stopped by to talk about Megadeth's newest album and most likely, too, his martial arts prowess. And more recently, Lamb of God's Randy Blythe came by to host another session of Tales from the Metalverse. In this edition of Tales from the Metalverse, Blythe talks about his wilder days when he would often ride on other bands' buses, usually when they were night owls like he was. Blythe recounts his exploits with Children of Bodom and the US Border Patrol and his Hatebreed holidays when he would ride on the band's bus between cities. After borrowing Hatebreed's tour manager's four-wheeler, he also had to outrun the local police. Asked by host Eddie Trunk if it's tough for him to be on the road where alcohol can be found everywhere, Randy said, "Hell no. Seeing people party and stuff, especially when they party and get stupid, I don't judge, but it makes it more repulsive to me, because I was like, Jesus, I was pretty bad. Nobody looks cool when they're wasted, so it just doesn't appeal to me, and I have better things to do. I'm trying to do good things with my life, write books and do photography and shit like that. I can't do that when I'm drunk. Plus, man, I drank enough. I did it for 22 years. I'm not going to discover anything new in drugs and alcohol." Good for him. I'm with him. You guys know from the show, I like me a glass of wine, but it's been a long time since I've gotten absolutely fucking trashed off booze, and I've never taken drugs before. I've never had any interest in it whatsoever. Again, not necessarily saying everybody has to feel that way, but I don't like being out of control. I don't like not having full control of my faculties. I hate the feeling of being drunk, and I despise the feeling of being hungover more than fucking anything. So, there is nothing about being drunk that is appealing enough for me to want to live with the feeling of being hungover. And obviously, when you turn 40 and above, that hangover lasts for a good 2 days. So it's just a waste of fucking time. On top of the fact that it's terribly bad for you, and I don't intend on dying of a fucking heart attack when I'm 65 years old. So yeah, kudos to Randy Blythe. I don't often say it, but his stock has gone up just a tad after that little snippet. Deicide officially start pre-production on their 13th studio album. Florida death metal veterans Deicide have officially started pre-production for their long-awaited new studio album. On the 20th of October, Deicide's newest addition, Taylor Nordberg, the guitarist, shared a photo of his studio setup from his home studio Smoke and Mirrors production, and he included the following message: "We've officially started pre-production for the new Deicide album." Some of you will have seen Glenn on the Garza podcast recently. I by the way, want to say well done to Chris Garza on that podcast. It's a good show. He's clearly going after some of that Joe Rogan money in the metal scene. Obviously, I occupy that space, so step off, bro. But in all seriousness, I like the setup that he's got. He doesn't always have people on that I like, but this interview that he did with Glenn was excellent. And it really made me think it would be very, very cool to have Old Man Glenn on the show at some point, in the future, if that's a possibility. Especially it seems like when you get him talking, he's a very, very interesting cat. I've only ever met him in person. I've never interviewed him, and when we met, we only spoke very briefly. And then, equally when you meet him, he's also being met by all the other freaks and weirdos who come out of the woodwork when Deicide play. So, but he commented about the direction of the new music. The new stuff that we're writing is really anthem style stuff. It's really good. There's a lot of prog stuff in there, mixed in there. Steve is our prog guy. He's the progressive rock guy. He likes to write those really black metal riffs and the progressive stuff. He's an amazing talent. He plays the piano. He can also play sweeps on guitar. He's a drummer. He can do it all. I love Steve as well. I think he's a fucking incredible drummer. He's one of my favorite drummers in extreme music, period. And I think it's cool that he has stayed as top-notch as he has done over the course of his career. Serge Tankian on dealing with online criticism. Nobody likes to be hated. Malevolent Creation recruits former CKY frontman Deron Miller. Interesting turn of events, because not long ago Ryan Taylor was introduced into the band, about 2 years ago it was, with the departure of Lee Wallenschlager. It says here, Florida death metal veterans Malevolent Creation have recruited Deron Miller as their new frontman, best known as the former lead vocalist and rhythm guitarist of rock band CKY, which he co-founded in 1998. Miller also fronts the progressive metal band Foreign Objects, the melodic death metal group World Under Blood, and the rock band 96 Bitter Beings. Malevolent Creation's founding guitarist Phil Fasciana announced Miller's addition to the band in a social media post earlier today. He wrote, "New frontman for Malevolent Creation is no other than Deron Miller, and after hearing his cover of Alliance or War on the World Under Blood album, you will understand why. Album is in the works now. Go to plastichead.com for all your Malevolent Creation merchandise. It's fucking on." It seems to me, when I looked into this, that Ryan did not actually know that he was no longer in the band. And I would also say, I don't know the backstory, obviously, but it seems a little, I'm trying to find the word, a little cunty, to boot out a guy who basically carried the band through a European tour that Phil wasn't even able to attend because of, I understand, a car accident. But then again, I mean, if you look at the lineup at Malevolent Creation, and it's literally been a who's who of people in in death metal. You know, you've had everyone from Dave Cool Ross, you know, through to Derek Roddy, people like that, you know, go through that band. I mean, like on Metal Archive, it's literally like a roll call of you know, fucking old school death metal guys. As you know, as people who have been, you know, in and out of that band. How long Deron Miller will stay there for, I don't know. However, I've heard World Under Blood. I didn't like it very much, but I did always think that his voice reminded me a little bit of Brett Hoffman, like a slightly more gruff version of Brett Hoffman. So I do want to hear what this cover sounds like. So this is the cover by World Under Blood, Deron Miller's band, of Alliance or War. Let's give it a listen and let's hear if the young buck has what it takes to front Malevolent Creation for the next at least 18 months before Phil kicks him out of the band as well. We're going to skip ahead by a couple of seconds because I'm not in the mood to listen to war samples for the next however long. I quite like that. I think that Deron's voice sounds really, really cool, and I think he's going to suit Malevolent Creation's music very well. I mean, I would go as far as to say, and I you know, this is by no means a dig or a diss or anything like that, because, you know, I'm friends with Lee, and I like the 13th War, but I would say, as far as somebody who sounds more like Brett and maybe could do those older songs more in the vein of Brett, I think maybe Deron is a better fit. But that being said, as I said, there's clearly an issue here. If you've run through literally tens of people in your band lineup over the years, it's not them who are assholes. Maybe you need to take a look in the mirror. And judging by the response on the socials, quite a few people feel the same way that I do. And of course, we all know about his little fucking meltdown on Facebook where he laid into Lee and laid into everybody else. He just doesn't seem like my kind of guy. And as I said, I like the 13th Beast. I think it was a good record. But I definitely can see that Daron would be a good addition to the band. Like if I take all emotion out of it, I think he'd be a guy who would do justice to those earlier songs. He's got a Brent Offman kind of vibe to him. All right, folks. I have been meaning to read some comments again on the podcast. I haven't done that for a while, and I keep threatening to do so. So I'm going to just jump into a couple of episodes here on YouTube and read some of the comments. I do reply to folks directly, but when I read the comments, I can talk a little bit more about it because I'm less lazy when it comes to recording my voice than I am to actually typing. So on episode 152, last week's episode with Mike Hill and Mike Scandato, Smite Your Foes writes, listening to this made me think of my own top 6, that being his favorite top 6 black metal releases of the 90s. His number 1 is Burzum, Vis Licet Tar Os. Great choice. That was obviously in my top 6 too. Ulver, Bertad, Enslaved, Elt, Satyricon, Nemesis Divina, Dissection, The Somberlane, Fluidity, Medtidsalcoma. That Fluidity record was also one of the records I was strongly considering for my top 6. It's very, very good. He says, I guess I prefer the less aggressive, more atmospheric, emotional side of black metal. Also, respect for what you said at the end about Miko Asper. I'd talk to someone like Varg before I talk to that guy. 100% agree. Miko Asper is a fucking scumbag. And also, again, it's not just a case that I would get angry talking to him. He's more somebody that I think just needs a fucking ass kicking than anything else. Randy E. writes, great episode, Jackie. Gotta love a list. Nice to hear good conversation about why stuff is where it is for them by people that have something valuable to say. Looking forward to future 666 episodes. Definitely there will be more of those, without a shadow of a doubt. I know Mike Scandato is well up for it. I'm sure Mike Hill is going to be up for it too. The next one we'll do is on our favorite 90s death metal releases. I definitely think we have to do ones on the noughties, both for death metal and black metal. Maybe 2010 to 2020 as well. And I'm also liking the idea of doing a best thrash of the 80s episode. But I just had a complete blast. Those are such fucking cool dudes. I love doing episodes with them anyway, or certainly doing episodes with Mike Hill. But it was nice having Mike Scandato on, and if you like that, get ready because there'll be more. Kostas Triantafidis, and apologies Kostas if I've massacred your surname. He says, I listened in my car and thought it ended with the top 666. I didn't listen to the last hour. What's wrong with me? Ha ha ha. Cheers, Jackie, the greatest metal podcast ever. You are a absolute badass, Kostas. Thank you very much. Richard Shubrook, I could listen to this in the background and not hate it. This is why I listen to the news rant. I'm glad you find my mirth amusing. Who else do we have here? Thomas Lipinski, he says, oh man, I don't have enough time to listen to all the new music coming out. What should I do? I know, I'll just add a bunch of old stuff on top. I'm sure that'll help. Jokes aside, what an epic episode. I loved every moment of it. I created a dedicated Spotify playlist as you guys were counting down your picks, and I'm currently pulverizing my eardrums with it. Dawn, absolutely superb, and to think they were not even mentioned on Metal Archives. On the subject of Mayhem, funnily enough, just as Mike Hill, the first time I heard the Mysteries, I absolutely hated the vocals. Loved the music on that album, still do. Hated the vocals, still do. I just can't help it. Attila's vocal style is not really my thing. How fucking dare you, sir? But I see this as an opportunity to give it a second chance. Maybe my sensitivity and taste have evolved over time, and I will grow to like it. Also, on the matter of Mayhem's live performances, I saw them once in 2016. There was a Christmas black metal festival in Gdansk, Poland, and they played the Mysteries in its entirety. I saw that too, and it was excellent. Again, funny coincidence, Watain played at that show as well, so another shout out to Mr. Hill. I can't say enough of how disappointed I was, unfortunately. They had those interludes in between the songs, this rumbling, bassy, throbbing noise that rolled into my ears, which eventually started literally hurting them. I didn't enjoy the theatrics of the performance either. It all felt absent, so lacking in emotion and energy. Maybe it wasn't their day, maybe it wasn't mine. If the world doesn't go to shit in the next couple of months, maybe I will get another chance to see them live. Perhaps it would be different this time round. And I just remembered something regarding Shane Black's The Predator. You need to watch this if you haven't already. It's pure gold. I'll definitely watch the video that you sent to Moss, and I appreciate the lengthy message, even though your views on Attila are wrong think. Let's be honest. Let's call them what they are. They're wrong think. I'm just fucking around, of course. If we go back down to let's check out episode 150, because there was one I wanted to talk about there, and maybe this is what I'll wrap it up with. Episode 150, of course, my conversation with David Gray. Loads of really, really good feedback on that episode. But unfortunately, we also had a few boos from the audience. One boo in particular, to be honest. Let's find this dude, unless he's now deleted his comment. But yeah, I mean, just as I search for it, just to stress again, I so appreciated everybody's everybody's feedback about that. A lot of people really seem to like it, and it seemed to mean an awful lot to people, which is great. However, Rob Hellfire writes, out of all the options for doing an interview outside, you guys pick the patio of an old folks home with the children running around to talk about death metal. Do they allow children to run around at the old folks home? Okay. Cheers. So clearly Rob enjoyed the episode, which I'm pleased about. But Rob, it was not the old folks home. It was a place called the Pheasantry in the very famous Bushy Park in Kingston upon Thames, London. Now, I will say, I know there was a fair bit of ambient noise in the background. There was more than I thought that there would be. These Rode microphones are very good, and I did test them beforehand in as much of a noisy environment as I could create, but I didn't have a bunch of kids on hand to scream and shout. So I hope it wasn't too distracting. It certainly seems from the feedback that it wasn't too distracting. Next time I do it, I think I'll probably do it a little differently. I did have a view and a kind of vibe I wanted to capture with this, but at the same time, I don't have fucking studio quality equipment, so I need to probably learn myself how to work around the limitations of what I've got. But there'll definitely be more in-person stuff, without a shadow of a doubt. It's just a whole different feeling when you sat there face to face and there's physical presence there. Yeah, obviously, I look forward to Rob Hellfire's highly professionally produced channel and interview with David Gray. Anyways, folks, that is the news wrapped up for this week. And my friends, that brings us to the end of another episode of the show. I hope you guys have enjoyed what you've heard. I have thoroughly enjoyed and appreciated every second with you. The show really does feel, if I look at the amount of direct messages and the just general response to every episode that I put up, feels like it's tidal wave and it just keeps coming and coming. And that could not have happened without the support of every single one of you. So I hope you know, as always, that I do not take that lightly whatsoever. I'll be back next week with Rob Watkins of Black Lava. Until then, I'm going to leave you with a track off the new Abduction record, Black Blood, which, as I said earlier on in the podcast, you absolutely have to get a hold of. In the meantime, my friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next Tuesday.